Welcome back to another edition of Confessions of a Cineslut, continuing on with the theme of satanic feminism. The film I've picked for today is Belladonna of Sadness from 1973. This is a Japanese animated film directed by Ichi Yamamoto, and Kanashimi no Belladonna was the Japanese title for this film. I actually wrote about this one for Diabolique magazine a few years ago now, and an essay called The Art of Living Deliciously, and I've also podcasted about it with my friends Mike White and Heather Drain for Mike's The Projection Booth podcast, and you can check that episode out over on his site. But I wanted to include this in the theme of satanic feminism because I think no other film really comes close to embodying the idea of satanic feminism. If you go back to the story of Adam and Eve, for example, where Eve is tempted by the serpent to take that apple and she brings about the fall of mankind. Women from this point onwards have there's always been this need to suppress curiosity in women, sexual curiosity, but just curiosity in general. Anything that is seen as getting above our stations, being too nosy, being too adventurous is kind of like this, steady on now. We don't want another fall of mankind. Just stay over there and be nice and behave yourself. So satanic feminism in this view is Satan actually becomes a liberating force, and this is certainly something that writers like Byron and Percy Shelley picked up on, and it's certainly something that you see in a lot of Eurocult cinema, whereas women becoming witches or making a pact with Satan or having anything to do with the occult can quite often result in a personal liberation. In this way, Satan becomes the rebellious liberator. And it's been very true over the centuries that women were able to find positions of power and even positions of equality through occult societies. And if you look at people like Madame Blavatsky, who just founded her own, it's actually quite incredible, positions that weren't offered in the church. And I know that that's changing, but I'm talking historically. The embracing of either Satanism or paganism or the occult has always comes with this empowering message for women, where they won't be judged on standard of sexuality and they won't be judged over social rank, and there is a breaking, a freeing of these traditions that keep us locked within patriarchy. Belladonna of Sadness, to my mind, is one of the best examples of this in cinema, as I've already said. Starts with this young woman called Jan. She's married to a guy called Jan. Anyway, they get married. It's set in this feudal medieval France. They get married, and on her wedding night there is this the Lord has this thing embedded, a bit like Braveheart, into the marriage contracts that he gets the first go on the bride. So Jan is raped and her new husband does nothing about it, and she goes away and is just so broken down by this experience. And along the way she meets this little demon who starts to whisper in her ear, and her husband's basically a bit of a loser. So the demon comes along and is kind of like, I could give you this, I could give you that, I could give you this power, and so she makes a pact with him. And when she opens herself up to embracing the satanic pact, she finds this incredible amount of liberation. It was based on Michelet's The Sorcerer, which is an incredible book written in the 1800s, 1862, which is a series of different essays about witchcraft. And for Michelet, he wasn't like a massive feminist in any stretch of the word, but he did believe that women had something, some sort of innate power. And he wrote about witchcraft in this book especially, and there's all these different stories in it, including a riff on the devils of Loudun, which is what then the story that inspired Ken Russell's The Devils. But to Michelet, paganism was a form of rebellion for the serfs. You know, the rest of the time they were property of the Lord, and they were forced to live in this very restrictive, slave-based existence. But at night they would go out and do their rituals under the moon, and they will be free. And so in The Sorcerer, it makes a very good argument for the freedom, the freeing and liberating essence of embracing paganism. Belladonna of Sadness makes the same arguments. This is Satan, but in a very different way to, you know, something in The Devil Rides Out. This is a devil who will grant liberation. And a lot of Jan's power has like a healing, freeing element about it, and she's able to cure people through the act of orgy, which is a wonderful thing. Sex becomes a powerful healing force. She is no longer victimized or oppressed in this horrible system where everything is the Lord's, including the women. And so even though she is punished, because women are usually punished when they go on these packs and find themselves, even though she is punished eventually, she experiences this evolution where she just becomes this, like, almost like a pagan goddess. 私は騙されているのよ。私は恐ろしい女になりたい。誰もが顔を背けて逃げ出すような、そうでなければいけないの。私は怒りや憎しみを忘れたくないの。怒りが憎しみが恨みが醜いものだと誰が決めた。お前は美しくなったのだ、ジャンヌ。そうだ、まるで恋をしている。And the film is so unique in that way because it doesn't use the figure of the witch like the hag or a figure of evil. It is purely good and purely sexual and purely feminine. And like I said, a healing force for the villagers, whereas the institution, the Lord, and the religious figures that reside next to him, they are corrupt. They are the rapists. They steal. They overtax people. They let the villagers live in absolute poverty. And so for Belladonna of Sadness, magic and occultism are absolute rebellion. It's really interesting that the film came out of Japan, given that it is based on a book by a French writer and philosopher who, you know, is talking about a very European tradition. But because of that, I think, and the film's, it is very psychedelic. It's got this incredible soundtrack, and very erotic too. It kind of breaks so many cultural boundaries and just is really in a place of its own in terms of not just animated film, but films that riff on this idea of satanic feminism. I was so glad to see that a few years ago, and I think that was when I wrote about it, actually got a 4K restoration, because it is so deserving of that. So if you've liked this video, please check the link in the comments to subscribe to Patreon for more content.